I'd venture to say that weed and feed is probably one of the most commonly purchased lawn products these days, and it's pretty much one of the most pointless ones of them all as well. There's an awful lot of lawn owners in this country, people who own their house and tend to their lawn, or rent a house and tend to the lawn, just manage a lawn. And one of the most common products that we see in every store, I don't care if you're going to a big box store or a little store, or your grocery store even, is weed and feed. Weed and feed is it's just everywhere. It's got a leaf here. It's just everywhere. And everyone buys it. Everyone is, remember, they tell stories about the one time that they went and they bought tons of weed and feed and they had the greatest lawn on the block. The thing is, I feel like this is a completely pointless product, and it is a marketing ploy to sell to people who don't know a ton about lawn care. If you were to go and find all of the most avid lawn care people in your neighborhood or your town, almost none of them actually use any form of weed and feed. And there are reasons for that. The reasons for that is pretty much everything packaged into a weed and feed bag. They're all necessary. They're all like necessary for a fantastic looking lawn. But the problem is they're never being applied at the best time of the year. And that's because each ingredient in weed and feed really should be applied at a different time of the year. Now, weed and feed bags tend to be a little bit expensive because they're all packaged together. Everything is all in one unit. And although you're only buying one bag, that one bag only covers so much lawn space. There's never really enough fertilizer in a weed and feed bag to do a lot of good, and you don't want to put the bag, you don't want to like put half of the bag down now and then half later, because then you're putting too many chemicals into the lawn. If you don't really have weeds in the lawn later in the season because you killed them earlier in the season, that product isn't necessary. If you're applying this late in the spring, then the pre-emergent facet of, like, let's say a more advanced weed and feed product is going to waste because all of the weeds have already germinated. In real lawn care scenarios, we're not going to be applying weed pre-emergent late in the spring. Pre-emergents that are found in many weed and feed bags are typically applied in the early spring to stop the weeds from germinating. If you're putting this down in the month of June, then that chemical that you're putting into the lawn is pointless, is wasted. You're literally just applying chemicals into the lawn for no reason whatsoever. If you're applying this early in the season, let's call it April, so that you're actually stopping the formation of new weeds in the lawn, then all of the weed killing things that are in here are mostly going to waste as well. This particular bag, now every bag's a little bit different, they all have a little different cocktail of weed killers in them. This one contains 2,4-D dicamba and quinclorac, which is literally, this thing fell over, which is literally the same active ingredients minus sulfentrazone that's found in my bottle of Spectracide. Now, I don't ever need to kill weeds in any great number in the month of April. Like, this bottle is never used in April where I live because the weeds aren't growing yet. So if you're putting this down hoping to stop weeds, then you're also putting down a bunch of chemicals onto the lawn to kill weeds that don't even exist. Now the same stuff here, I got this right here. This is Triad Select. This uses the same weed killing active ingredients. The only difference is this is more potent. So whether you're looking at a really potent, fancy weed killer or an over-the-counter Walmart variety or grocery store variety, it's the same chemicals that are in this. You're going to put those down at different times of the year. Now, let's say, let me readjust here. Let's say we're looking at this from a fertilizer standpoint. Every single bag of weed and feed that I have ever found is heavy in nitrogen and light in phosphorus and potassium, and contains no minor nutrients or biostimulants or soil building ingredients of any kind. I've never seen one. Please, if you have seen one, drop, I don't know, mention of it down in the comments below, because I'm curious. I've never seen one before. This particular bag is a 2204, which means A good healthy dose of it is nitrogen. There's no phosphorus and there's a little bit of potassium in it. There's no minor nutrients and there's no biostimulants of any kind. Also, the problem here is all of the nitrogen in this is fast release nitrogen. Every bag of weed and feed that I have ever seen contains an awful lot of urea and or a blend of synthetic fertilizers, synthetic nitrogen sources. These are things that are water soluble or easily broken down in the lawn and used very fast. They also happen to be high on the salt index. So when you put this down, you're going to be pushing strong growth quickly. That's not something that we want to do in the early parts of spring when the pre-emergent aspect of this product is applicable. And unless you're running a warm season grass, you don't really want to push fast, vigorous growth in the late spring either, because we're pushing, cool season grasses are pushing into high stress times of the year, the high heat parts of summer. Warm season grasses, maybe, because they're entering into the highest growth phase of that particular grass type. So maybe it could work out for them. But the point here is, if we're applying this as a pre-emergent or a weed killer, we're getting that fertilizer with it. And the fertilizer, if you run the math, is a... All right, let's talk math really quick. That bag right there covers 4,000 square feet. The bag weighs 9.6 pounds. 22% of the bag is nitrogen. If you run the math and divide 9.6 pounds divided by 4 1,000 square foot applications, and then multiply by 22%, one application of that is putting down 0.52 pounds of nitrogen for every 1,000 square feet. That's not a lot of nitrogen, and although your lawn will respond to it quickly, it's not going to last for very long, and it's not going to push it very much, and you can't apply it a second time because the chemicals that are in the bag. Just barely over half a pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet, which isn't a lot, but it's all fast, so it's all going to be used up pretty quickly, and it's not going to push growth for a long period of time. If we're putting this down, let's say you live in Chicago and you're putting this down in the middle of June, then you're going to be pushing pretty strong growth going into 4th of July weekend and the early parts of July, right when we've got the harshest sun of the year and the hottest temperatures of the year, and our grass doesn't really want to be growing that vigorously at that point. Literally the best thing that you can be doing in terms of fertilizing your lawn in the early parts of the year is to be putting down a slow release, naturally sourced fertilizer. Now, urea and synthetics have their place. They can be used for situational needs, and they can be used as we're exiting summer, going into fall. We're going into a strong growth period of the year with low pressure. If we want to really thicken a lawn up, then we can use these things to really thicken a lawn up and fill in some bare spots. But in a lawn like my own self right here, like I don't really have bare spots. There's no need for me to push excessive growth. I don't have bare spots to fill in. I just want to maintain a nice looking lawn. And that's what the soil building aspects of slow release, naturally sourced fertilizers do. You don't get that in any bag of weed and feed that I have ever seen. This is easy, and that's why people buy it, and that's why stores stock it, and that's why people, like, I don't know, they tell stories about the year that they used it and they had a great result in the lawn. It doesn't build up your lawn soil, so over time your lawn actually isn't any healthier. It's like if you apply this one year, next year the lawn isn't any healthier. It's a slightly less healthy. It might be starting from a thicker standpoint because you pushed extra nitrogen that you might not have otherwise. But again, the nitrogen that you're pushing is not actually a big dose. Typically, you're finding avid lawn care professionals and enthusiasts, let's call it enthusiasts, are usually pushing, unless they're spoon feeding, like fertilizing a little bit every 2 to 3 weeks, they're pushing 3/4 of a pound to a pound, maybe even a touch more if they're not fertilizing often and they're using slow release sources. They push that much per application, which you're not even getting close to when you push this. And you can't increase the volume that you're putting down without wasting chemicals into your lawn. I got a big problem with weed and feed. Now, there is one possibly at the end of spring going into a warm season grass type, or maybe in the middle of spring if you're trying to thicken out a really thin lawn, maybe you can apply this. But truly, there's only one time a year that I can really get on board with a semi-majority of people using this product. I did make a video completely about that. It's the only time of the year that I personally would consider putting down any weed and feed product. I have a link right up here in the corner, so make sure to take a look at that. But I promise you, there are better options than applying weed and feed. Better ways to fertilize your lawn, better ways to kill weeds, and better ways to stop weeds that haven't germinated yet. Look into the description below for links to videos that go into all of those topics.